we'll move on to diet.
It's a really important point, I think, to talk about the actual word diet. When people hear diet, they think cutting out foods, minimizing portion sizes, to lose
Giving
weight.
something
That's
up,
not what a diet is.
restrictive.
Yeah.
Diet
Basically
is the
means
food you eat on a
something you
daily
eat.
basis.
Yeah.
To stay alive.
It's
yeah,
not,
100%.
it's not complicated. It doesn't need to be restrictive. But it depends on what your goal is. And I think if we just break it down into one of two things, let's call it one of three things. Are you happy with your current weight? If so, stick to eating roughly the amount of calories that you need to maintain that weight. If you're looking to lose weight, calorie deficit. If you're looking to gain weight, calorie surplus. And it really is that simple. How you get there is through your diet. And that's it. So what you eat, whether you eat a little bit more to gain a little bit of weight and a little bit of muscle, or a little bit less to lose a little bit of weight, a little bit of fat, is obviously dependent on the specific person. But do not be fooled by this diet, that diet, the other diet, whichever ones we're going to go into. They're all there for the same reason.
The different types of diets and how they may be benefit to you. We'll briefly go into them. We're not going to go deep and we're not going to talk about how to do them as such. So I've just wrote a list down. The first one is, again, front and center popularity contest, intermittent fasting. We touched on this in the last podcast.
Yeah.
What intermittent fasting is intermittently fasting. Basically, for the most part, you've got 16 hours of the day where you fast, where you don't eat anything. You can drink as much water or calorie-free pop. Didn't say soda this time. I got called out for saying soda on the last one.
Personal growth, isn't it?
It is. So you don't starve yourself. You fast for 16 hours of the day and you have an 8-hour eating window. So usually your eating window is midday, 12 o'clock till 8 o'clock at night. So you've got 8 hours where you can, they put it as you can eat whatever you want, but that's just bullshit. They're running on a gamble that one, you'll get full quick because you're starving and you'll eat quick. You'll eat a load in the thing. But again, 12 o'clock to 8 o'clock for the massive amount of people, you are busy. You're at work, you're dealing with the kids, you're doing whatever you need to do. Your day is busy between that time. And then between 8 o'clock at night and 12 o'clock the next day, 8 o'clock you're finished eating, so you're satisfied till about 11. You go to bed, you get up, you're busy. It's only a matter of willpower for a couple hours.
Yeah. Like you see, you've said before a bunch of times, it's basically skip your breakfast and therefore you'll eat lower calories. Again, intermittent fasting is basically a weight loss type diet. Like as we said before, not all diets are weight loss diets. And the basic fundamentals behind it are you'll eat less if you eat in less time, which again makes perfect sense. There's been a lot of claims around intermittent fasting that it boosts different parts of your life.
So much pseudoscience. There's a guy who's saying it's not about calories in versus calories out. And he's writing books on intermittent fasting and making a fortune. And he made a statement that having a pack of cigarettes is healthier than having a bowl of chips. I'm like, if you follow this guy and buy his books after he said that, like, what the hell?
Again, there's nothing wrong with intermittent fasting. There's nothing wrong with if you feel like that is going to work for you. And I mentioned last week or before, the later I have my breakfast, the more likely I'm going to have my dinner later, the more likely I'm going to have my tea later and not snack in between. And that makes perfect sense. And if that's the reason that you're doing it, fine. But that's not technically intermittent fasting because it's not sticking to hard and fast rules. But then why, what's the benefit of sticking to 8 hours instead of 9 hours?
I'm
confident to say they'll be on.
People just need to say they belong to something.
But
I did intermittent fasting and I did enjoy intermittent fasting because I don't usually have breakfast. I'll have breakfast if I know I'm going to have a busy day at work. I'll force myself to have breakfast, but I can quite happily go till 12, 1 o'clock without any food. But again, it goes down to two things. The diet works because it's a calorie deficit, but it fails at adherence because it's not lifestyle suitable for most people. Like I was meant when I was at work, I could stick to that when I was at work easy. But if I was off work and I was with the family, like, oh, do you want to go for breakfast? Nah, I'm intermittent fasting. Like, oh, my window doesn't open till 1 o'clock because I'm not finishing kickboxing the night till 8:30, so I need my window to go till 9, so I can't eat with the family. You've got to wait. Like, it's not lifestyle.
You're just setting yourself up for failure, aren't you? Really? Yeah. You're making it hard for yourself. Like, make it as easy as possible for yourself. That's why there's nothing wrong with making something easy to achieve. If it's going to be the same goal, achieve it in an easier way. Yeah, fine.
The next one, keto.
Say again, keto.
Keto. So
also known as bullshit.
giving up carbohydrates. I'd rather chop my arm off. And that was the cleanest way I was going
I
to put
literally,
that.
when you just said giving up carbohydrates, I literally felt like a pit in my stomach for a second. You know, like that feeling when you hear something you don't like and you go, oh, that is literally how I felt when you said that. That was spooky.
Like, yeah. So the ideology behind it is when you switch out when you give up carbohydrates, with carbohydrates being the main source of energy, you give up carbohydrates, it will force your body to look for a new source of energy, and it turns to body fat. It turns to your body fat stores for energy. There's two trains of thoughts for who should use this. Again, it's a good tool for those that are going on stage, prep stage, because they can lose fat very quickly on it. And the science, I haven't read the full science articles on it, but for those with epilepsy, it's meant to help with their seizure control.
That is way above my pay grade. And that may well be the case, you know, and that's fine. I think the funny part about what you've just said, those two different groups of people who it will be applicable for, that probably applies to 0.01% of the population. And that's
100%.
probably where that diet belongs, in my opinion.
Yeah. You're creating a calorie deficit because you've took a whole macro out. You can only eat so much chicken and eggs and all that, like just protein and fats before you... Protein fills you quicker. So if you're making the majority of your diet protein based, you're going to be full quicker. You're going to eat less in the long term. Again, I tried it. I lasted till 5 o'clock in the evening and thought, screw this shit. I didn't even hit ketosis. People say that after 3 or 4 days, you'll feel groggy for 3 or 4 days. You hit ketosis, which is where you've depleted the carbs and you're using your fat stores and stuff, and you feel better. Your energy goes through the roof. I think they're trying to convince themselves more than me, but that's their thing. But then, like, what happens when you go to the bar and you get like I can drink vodka and Diet Coke because it's got no carbs, and the barman's not paying attention, puts Coke in, boom, your diet got ruined even there. Bam. You picked up the wrong soda.
Again, you're just making it hard for yourself. I don't see the benefit. I was scrolling through, I want to say Instagram the other day, and I seen a fitness influencer talking about keto diet, and they were like, I've lost 8 pounds in 5 days. And I looked and I was like, you don't even look like you've got 8 pounds to lose. Like, that cannot be healthy. That can't be healthy. Unless you're like 300 pounds plus, losing 8 pounds in a week is just a terrible, terrible way to go. And even if you are 300, 400, 500 pounds, 8 pounds is a lot. Do you know what I mean? That is not okay. Again, if it's for a very, very specific reason, like stage prep, in a very, very short window of time, do what you want. But if it's for longer than a few days, no.
People, again, I said at the start, like, Western culture is very heavily carb based. So you use keto for 5-6 weeks, you lose the weight, then you revert back to your normal eating habits. You're just going to balloon.
But I mean, again, the kind of the fundamentals is probably not a bad idea. We eat too much carbs as a Western society. Eat less carbs then. Why none? Why zero carbs? Like, I don't believe in that. No,
like,
I don't believe in that at all.
And everything.
Lower your carb intake, increase your protein intake. Jobs are good. You don't need to make it more complicated than that.
The next one's similar but not, that I've got written down, and it's like paleo. Do you know what the paleo? So the paleo diet.
I don't, but I know. I
haven't went too deep into it. It's like it gets named different things, like the ancestral diet, the prehistoric diet, and a lot of people rave on this, on the benefits and that. It's basically like non-processed foods, your meats, your fish, fruits, nuts, veg, seeds, that sort of legumes and that. And again, if you're eating a lot of meat, you're gonna fill up quicker. It's going to create a calorie deficit. You've removed a lot of food, especially for the average person. They're just going to stick to boring. Right, their meals are going to be the same. It's going to be like keto all the time. They're not going to have a berry diet. They're going to get filled up quick because they know they can eat this steak. Someone was trying to convert us into the meat-only diet the other day, and I swear to God, that did sound really good. He's like, I'm cooking 35 pounds of bacon for the next 2 days. I was like, shit, sign me up. Don't even tell me anything more. And then I realized it was Friday, and I was like, screw that, I want pizza.
Yeah, I have heard a bit about the caveman diet, or whatever you want to call it, for very, very, very specific problems, like health conditions. And obviously there's limited science on whether it can be a good thing, A, at all, or B, in the long term. But that sounds a little bit like a fad to me, unless you are part of the 0.1%.
So again, intermittent fasting, creates a calorie deficit via limiting the amount you eat. Paleo and keto creates a calorie deficit by removing macros or removing food groups. High carb, low carb cycling days. Like this is, you've got a calorie target. And I do calorie targets by the day, but I tell people look at the weekly as well. Like if you go over by a day, that's fine. Like don't just adapt it. But having high carb, low carb cycle days, if you're a strict athlete and you know your training regime and how your body works, then champion. But having high carb and low carb days is just a lot of work, unnecessary, and it's going to create bad habits. Like you do that diet and it doesn't work because it was hard work planning it. The next time when you look, right, I'm going to go into flexible diet, and you're going, oh, but it was a load of hassle the last diet I went on.
It does sound like an overcomplicated version. Like average it out over the course of a week or a fortnight or a month or whatever, and you're generally going to be thereabouts anyway, unless you're an athlete. Yeah, it's
steak night tomorrow night in our house. Like if I went into my last and went, just put the steak on, didn't give us any chips or any sweet potatoes because it's low cycling day, should be like, what?
Should slap you with the steak?
Be like, wait, what you're going to have as a side? I don't know, lettuce. Like, no,
really?
Just moderation. You know what I mean? Like, don't make it hard for yourself.
Yeah, I watched a video of a CrossFit athlete in their like daily routine, and she said, I think it was Tia Claire Toomey, the like multiple time world champion. So like when you're that level, that's not who we're talking to here. But when you're at that level, I think she said, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like on my days where I train 2 or 3 times a day, I have 2,550 calories. And on the days where I only train once a day, I have 2,400 calories. And I was like, what's the point? Like, it's such a small difference, you know? What is the point? I couldn't be bothered.
People won't, like, that's a tiny amount for her. And that's like the very minute details that will make a difference on an athlete scale who everything is pinpoint. But then you've got people who's like, I'm carb cycling or calorie cycling. I'm on 2,500 a day, 600 tomorrow. Like massive up and downs. Like, why you want to be miserable on a Tuesday? It's a shit day of the week anyway.
I think the only kind of way I would look at that concept and say that's potentially a good idea is if you know you've got a barbecue coming up at the weekend, lower your not necessarily carbs, but calories in general.
This goes to weekly and daily thing, though, doesn't it?
By a tiny bit. So, for example, if you're on a calorie target of 2,500 calories and you know I'm going to a barbecue on the weekend or I'm going out for drinks or I'm going out for a meal and I don't want to be looking at the menu and thinking, I wonder how much this has got in, you know, lower your calorie intake by 100 or 150 a day to bank those calories up for the weekend. Yeah, that's fine. No issue with that because that's for a specific reason. That's going to make your life better, not
damage
worse.
control. Yeah. You're not making it hard work for yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
Meal replacement diets, like so meal replacement diets for the average person is you will replace 1 to 2 meals a day, usually breakfast and dinner, and then you'll have your tea, like a big meal in the nighttime. You can see where the calorie deficit comes in because you're controlling 2 of your meals with a 250 calorie shake maximum. And then you can go a bit more free rein on the evening. This may work for some, but it goes down to the failure again of adherence. First off, you're never going to be on that all your life. You're going to come to a point where you want to go out for dinner, for lunch with someone, or you want a dinner. And the other thing is, it is miserable as shit drinking protein for a food. Like your dinner time comes and you drink a protein shake and you're like, I'm a little bit full. But you miss the crunch. You naturally want to chew something. So you put less water in and try and chew the protein shake. Like, it doesn't work. So the adherence falls. You start snacking and you just cycle out of it.
Yeah. Plus, like you say, you're never going to be able to sustain that for a long period of time. So going back to what we said last week, create healthy habits for yourself. Create, a situation where you're making things easy to follow. So that when you do fall off the wagon once in a while, which inevitably everybody does, it's easy to get back on again.
Yeah,
exactly. I think that's an under talked about point is like you're gonna mess up at some point. It's just inevitable. So why make it more difficult to adhere to in the first place and then more difficult to go back to? No, not interested.
And I think this feeds into the two that I personally recommend and the two diets that I use. The first one being, and they're both very similar, but I'll talk about them both. So like if it fits your macros. And that is basically, you've got a calorie target and all your calories are made up of three things: protein, carbs, and fat. So
Mhm.
whatever you eat, you match them up to this calorie target. And it's great for people because they can eat what they want as long as they eat towards that calorie target. The
Yeah.
problem with this, and that's where you create the calorie deficit out of the calorie target. The problem where this falls apart is it becomes stressful for people having four things really to monitor. They've got to hit the calorie target. Then they're faffing about with that plate and that macros, trying to make the carbs and the fat and the protein match
Oh,
up.
I've put 7 too many peas on my plate.
Yeah, shit. Oh, I've went over on fat, but I'm so much under on protein. How can I balance that out?
Yeah.
Where If It Fits Your Macros started, I believe this is the order it started, and it started with If It Fits Your Macros. This is the way I discovered it, and then it revolved to flexible dieting.
Yeah, which is basically a beginner's version of If It Fits Your Macros. Yeah.
So flexible dieting, you've got your calorie target and your protein target, and you can basically ignore the carbs and fat, because if you've hit your calorie target and you've hit your protein target, regardless of what MyFitnessPal says on fats and carbs, you're still in your calorie deficit at the top.
Yeah. If that's your goal,
If that's your goal, we're talking fat loss. Like when we talk diet, we usually
but the same exact rules. The same exact rules apply to weight gain, muscle growth, etc. I think the benefit of those two diets. There's an analogy that I heard, which was to do with something completely different, but it really applies in this logic. So the analogy was, imagine you're in a square room and you're stood in the corner, and someone says to you, "I want you to walk to that corner in a straight line," right? So you walk, you're on your, off you go, and then the person puts a chair in your way. What do? You stop. That's a diet. That's keto. That's paleo. What do I do when something happens? Nothing. You can't do anything. If they said to you, "I want you to walk to that corner in as short a distance as possible," and they put a chair in you, you walk around the chair. You can put as many chairs in the way as you want. You find a way around it.
Vodka, I'll throw it.
Yeah. You walk, you crawl under the chair, whatever. You
Yeah,
still get to
amazing.
where you're going. You get to your destination, i.e., you lose the weight that you're looking to lose, or you gain the muscle that you're looking to gain, because you went whichever way and you meander around the obstacles, and that's the key. So like I said, make it as easy as possible for yourself. Make it flexible. Is the clues in the name? Do you know what I mean? Yeah, make it flexible.
I had a discussion online, quite a fiery discussion with someone saying that you shouldn't be doing like flexible diet and you shouldn't be calorie counting. And I was like, it boiled down to, I was like, it creates accountability. And she said that it creates obsession. Like, these aren't here, calorie counting programs aren't here to become your life. It's a blueprint. It's like it's like stabilizers on a bike. So this is what you need to be doing. And then as you go, you start eyeballing food and stuff, and you stop calorie counting as much, because you've created these lifestyle habits. This word we keep coming to, habits, that you're now doing it automatically. You're now calorie counting automatically because you know for the majority of things. Yes, gradually you'll probably start gaining a bit of weight over time when you stop being so strict and stop eyeing it. What gets measured gets improved. And if you're not measuring it, you will start out, but you've got the tools where you can go, right, for the next couple of weeks, I'll start calorie counting again, get this under control.
I think
it's
that's
like spending in the bank.
the key. Yeah.
Nobody goes, shit, we're living in overdraft. Yeah, we better spend more money. You look through your bank statements and go, where am I spending useless money? And for me and my lass, it's just eat.
That's snap. I think again, like I think that's a perfect analogy. Actually, look at it like you're spending. If you are, if you get paid roughly the same every month, which obviously, let's say a lot of people do, right? If you get paid roughly the same every month and your bills are always the same every month, you know inherently, roughly, I will have X amount left. And if for 1 month you've overspent a little bit and you've dipped into your overdraft, what do? Well, the next month you just tighten your belt a little bit. If that's applicable, if you don't need to because your overdraft is whatever it is and you want to do whatever you want, fine. But then you can move back again. Or you can, if like in the last 12 months, you haven't been going to the gym, so you haven't been paying for it. You haven't been eating out as much because places are closed. You haven't been going to the pub. You might have increased your savings. That gives you a little bit of a buffer to then start enjoying yourself a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? And it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same concept when it comes to counting calories, following a diet, whatever. The benefit of the later diets we've talked about is they're easy to dip back into in the short or the long term for whatever particular reason that you think of.